This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is very different to our weekday show because this one is a competition. It is all about the two of us each nominating what we think was the biggest business story of the week. We'll nominate the most remarkable story, a sleeper story, and then our favourite business-related story. It gets a little bit loose by the end of it, doesn't it? And every week we are joined by a judge to pick a winner because we cannot judge ourselves. That would be horrendously unfair. That judge is our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, am I right in saying that last week when I was away, you two competed and in a strategic disaster for Michael, you beat Adam?
I did. And yes, strategically, it's not a good idea to beat the person who's going to be judging you the next week.
It's like beating Donald Trump at golf, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, when you don't win many shows, I take the win where I can get it. And so, look, I'm happy. Let's jump into the biggest story of the week. I've got a fantastic piece of feedback from a listener, a group of listeners. In fact, I will not share it yet. I will share it shortly, depending on how the first category goes.
Prepare to be shocked.
Yeah, whether I need to unload this particular piece of feedback. But we'll jump into the biggest business story. What was it for you this week, Sean?
It's a bit hard to go past markets this week, particularly equity markets. The S&P ASX 200 hit a new all-time high of 7,910.7 points. It came off towards the end of the week, but it's still trading close to record levels. Now, for the March quarter, it was up around 4%. That's a strong return. The local and overseas bourses are doing well because there's growing confidence that interest rates will start falling later this year, and that should be good for earnings. Mind you, that isn't a sure thing, and some local economists are arguing that rates actually won't start falling until next year. If you're looking for highlights, go no further than the tech stocks. Companies like WiseTech Global, Xero, NextDC, Altium's had a great run, 40% up this year so far, but it did have a takeover offer, doesn't count. Property's also done well. Goodman Group, Westfield Mall Owners Centre and Stockland, throw in Wesfarmers, JB Hi-Fi, Harvey Norman, even the banks, ANZ, Westpac and National Australia Bank, bunch of gold stocks. You have the story there. These are all companies that do better when rates are falling. And this week, the market peaked because of that expectation that rates will fall. Special mention to Mesoblast in the past six trading sessions, right? So we're talking a little over a week. Its share price has almost tripled as investor excitement surrounding its pending US Food and Drug submission continues to build. Quick mention of the US because a similar story there. The broad-based S&P 500 hit a record this week. In fact, it's hit close to 25 new highs this year. Tech stocks have led the way, particularly NVIDIA. We know that story. It's not far off having doubled in value in 2024 alone. Apple and Tesla are the exceptions, having gone backwards. In fact, Microsoft, the number one company in terms of market cap, is now worth about $500 billion more than former number one Apple, and the difference between Apple and NVIDIA is now a bit over $400 billion and closing. Big week for markets. Michael, stop rolling your eyes. I'm watching you there and you're just you're shifting around and you're sighing and you're...
it was a good story, just a long one. And after this one, because this one I know I'm going to go a bit overtime as well, I should get bonus points for brevity.
After this category.
After this one, because my story this week is undoubtedly the biggest story of the week because it goes to the very heart, the engine room of the economy, small business. Now, SMEs are not just the heart of the economy, actually. They're not just the engine room of the economy. They are the lifeblood of the economy.
So at this point, I think we should just jump in. Adam, can you give us the 5 criteria for ranking? Because there's one particular criteria here which Michael is absolutely exceeding.
I sure can, Sean. So we've got topicality, timeliness.
Irrelevant.
Economic impact.
Irrelevant so far.
Subjective bias.
Irrelevant.
And last, melodrama.
Oh, woo. Off we go.
He's kicked off well with that, hasn't he?
He certainly had. Let's go back to the lifeblood of the economy story.
Lifeblood, engine room, beating heart of the economy, all of these things. And look, they are all, yes, it's all a little bit melodramatic, but really, of the 2.6 million businesses in Australia, 98% are small and medium-sized enterprises. So learning this week
that they owe the vast majority of the more than $50 billion in unpaid taxes in this country, and that the ATO is about to crack down on SMEs. Well, that is a big story. That's not just a big story. That is a monster story. You had new ATO Commissioner Rob Heffernan declaring that the ATO has now returned to normal debt collection practices after showing quite a bit of leniency during COVID. A significant portion of the amount going unpaid is GST being collected from consumers. So it's a hit to the economy because it's not then being paid on to the government, and it'll be a hit to those small businesses when the taxman comes to collect, and more businesses are now kind of falling behind. It's been a big week overall for small business. We learned as well that the banks aren't being particularly supportive of SMEs in some cases, with the RBA revealing that despite small businesses and medium-sized businesses spending a record 25% more on research and development than large companies, that banks are generally unwilling to take the risk and lend to these entrepreneurs who are building this country. What does this mean for innovation? What does it mean for growth in Australia? But at least the government is going to help out with the Prime Minister flagging relief from energy prices in the budget next month. What this week has done, Adam and Sean, is turn a spotlight, just trained it right onto small business in this country, to their challenges, to their success, to the impending crackdown by the tax office, and to what is needed to supercharge that beating heart of the Australian economy. It is the biggest story by far.
Wow.
We need like a James Brown attendant to come out and put the cloak on Michael for that huge story.
Whew, he's sweating.
You two are just there, sitting there watching me, and I'm just like, I feel like a bit of a...
I'll go on.
Look, I feel like sometimes I might over-egg things.
Really?
Just
No.
I wonder at what point that thought creeps in.
Well, it's rare that it does.
Did you ever work in commercial radio? Any chance?
Just briefly? Yeah. 15 years?
I wonder where your training came from.
Alrighty. Sean, you didn't quite get there up to the dizzy heights that Michael did on melodrama.
No.
But you do win biggest story of the week. I think the SMEs is really, really interesting. But it's like the Pareto principle, the old 90-10 rule. While those 98% of businesses in the SME space owe a lot of money and the tax office is looking to collect it, the markets, the scale of the companies involved here is much bigger. And so to see that at a time where we've got all the indicators are showing us so many things of points of interest, consumers are gloomy, businesses are a bit better, but that we're able to see property prices at such highs and the ASX at such highs, all-time highs, is the biggest story of the week for me. So well done, Sean.
Now, can I just say thank you very much. I do appreciate that. You did mention the Pareto principle and you talked about 90%, which is, isn't the Pareto principle the one that's the 80-20 one?
Oh, yeah.
How dare you? How dare you invoke the Pareto principle against me? This is outrageous.
And get it wrong.
Oh, well, I mean, as soon as you said that, like Sean just kind of jumped up a little bit, and whereas me, I'm just like, what? What's a Pareto?
We'll call it the Pareto Plus principle, 90-10.
Pareto Plus. I like OPEC Plus. I like it.
Okay, so that's 1-0. It seems a very good time to share a bit of feedback with you from some valued listeners.
This is a surprise.
I reckon we're both going to get a whack here, Adam. This would be my guess.
Principally me.
But fear not, Sean. You're in the clear.
Oh dear, Adam.
Line me up. Come on.
Okay, this came in via Instagram. So head to Fear and Greed Podcast on Instagram and follow us there. This came from David.
Is that a family member, Michael?
No, certainly not. Though he is a family member, not mine, and that is relevant here. Hello, Fear and Greed crew. I was introduced to your podcast around 12 months ago. I am now a happy and regular listener. Good start.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I have a problem. My kids, 7 and 11 years old, are exposed to the weekend edition when driving. You see, we have a deal in the car where 90% of the time, so that's the Pareto principle.
Pareto Plus.
You see, we have a deal in the car where 90% of the time we listen to the Trolls 3 soundtrack on repeat, which I'm very, very familiar with, David, because we have a very similar kind of deal in our car. But anyway, 90% of the time we listen to the Trolls 3 soundtrack on repeat. However, the other 10% is allocated to Fear and Greed.
Yay, David.
Which is glorious. Anyway, that is not the problem, David says. The problem is the feedback from my kids.
How old are they again, Michael?
That they are 7 and 11, and they are both very, very wise.
Classmates of your children, perhaps? Anyway.
No, just to be clear, I have no idea who David is. I have no idea who his kids are. His kids are older than mine, so I think I'm in the clear.
But you like them, obviously, because something's coming here.
He's a big fan of David's.
I respect them.
Okay.
Because of what they say. The problem is feedback from my kids. They are convinced that Michael is not receiving fair grades. At times, it is subjective. That, David, is an understatement. However, there are occasions when my kids shout out in rage at the judging decisions. My oldest, who happens to like debating, will at times articulate multiple reasons why Michael should have won a particular segment. At this point, I think I would say my kids are Fear and Greed fans. However, they want to see an improvement in judging and fast. I love that message from David. It is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I like it because it's just true. Like every word is true. And David, you've articulated it so well, and your kids are valued listeners, and I appreciate you. And you know what? We need to rise up against Adam.
Anyway, for now, it's 1-0 to Sean.
All right. Most remarkable story. So I'll just pause my coup just for a moment.
Put it on hold for a moment.
I'm going to keep this one brief, most remarkable. I'm going to keep this one brief because I know I've been a little bit verbose so far. And also because I don't need to be extravagant in my language or melodrama to prove just how remarkable this one is. Also, there's a risk that the more I talk, the greater the likelihood that I'm going to say something that is inaccurate and damage the show's credibility even more than Adam has damaged it already with his misquoted Pareto principle. Anyway, the fact is that the gold price this week has been nothing short of remarkable. For the first time ever this week, gold topped $2,300 an ounce. That is an incredible record for the precious metal. I think we can all agree on that, right? Yes. Yes, everyone's nodding. Good. There are a number of reasons for it. Interest rate expectations have a lot to do with it, but geopolitical factors also play a part. There's a lot of uncertainty caused by conflict, the war in Ukraine and Middle East as well. At the same time, you've had central banks stocking up. And a little interesting point here, I'll just add in a little bit of trivia for you. Last year, the People's Bank of China reportedly bought about 225 tons of gold. Now, I'm no gold expert, but that sounds like a lot.
It does sound like a lot. It's probably not that much because it's so heavy, that stuff.
What gold is
Pound
heavy?
for pound.
Yeah.
Ounce for ounce.
But put it all together, the gold price has absolutely soared. Now, because I'm finishing up this category early and I'm not going to go into kind of any more detail.
Oh, no. Here we go.
I'm going to give you a couple of gold facts.
Oh.
Did you know that around 212,500 tons of gold have been mined throughout history? That's all. That's all. I mean, that's all. That seems like quite a bit. Still, 2/3 of that has been mined since 1950. Isn't that amazing? And since gold is considered to be pretty much virtually indestructible, it means that all of that gold that's been mined throughout history still exists in one form or another, and it might just be melted down and kind of turned into another form. Then, final fact, my favorite fact of all, that if you got every single little bit of gold that has ever been mined and you put it all together into one space, the cube of pure gold would only measure 22 meters on each side, or the equivalent of about 3.25, 3.3 swimming pools. There you go. Gold facts. I have inundated you with gold facts because I finished early, because brevity was my friend today.
Can I give you another one? Did you know if you put all the gold ever mined in the world together, it would fit well and truly under the Eiffel Tower? Another way of thinking about it.
That is fantastic.
Kind of cool, isn't it? When I my first ever job outside school, I went and worked at the Reserve Bank, and on their induction, we got down to go and look at the gold bars that the Reserve Bank had held in the vault. And
that is so cool.
I think they've moved them out now, but it was very cool just to go down and just sort of see these bars of gold. Quite amazing.
That's compared to doing a fear and greed induction where all you get to do is see Adam's spreadsheets.
Here's your login, and here's my favourite spreadsheet.
Yes.
Oh, that is awesome.
Actually, I remember less about the gold, more about the vault door. That was kind of cool.
That would be cool. Was it big?
Yeah, big, real big,
thick,
real big. Anyway, nice effort, Michael. Nice effort. Isn't anywhere near the most remarkable story of the week, though.
The gold price is extraordinary. It's remarkable.
You could tell when you said $2,300 an ounce, and there was just like tumbleweeds.
Well, it's just I can't control the lack of appreciation that you two have.
David's kids at the moment are going off.
They are celebrating. They are going, Michael, you've nailed it.
Yes, that's right.
Again.
Yep. Look, the most remarkable story on it goes to the flagging demand for electric vehicles. For months and years, we've been told we all need to buy an EV. But this week we found out that people aren't really listening. Tesla became the most popular electric vehicle in the world during the March quarter, retaking the title from China's BYD, which took it during the December quarter. But neither manufacturer had much to skite about. Telstra delivered about 387,000 vehicles during the quarter. It was supposed to deliver about 450,000 vehicles. That miss, 60,000 vehicle miss, is the biggest in Tesla's short history. It was actually about 20% lower than the December quarter. BYD, the Chinese manufacturer, sold only 300,000 vehicles in the March quarter, even though it cut the cost of almost every model in its lineup. Locally, the number of EVs sold in March was a record, but the market share of EVs compared to all vehicles actually went backwards during March. I'm talking about the month of March. Why has the steam come out of the EV market? It was never there. True, it's an EV. However, there are some specific reasons. Tesla had problems in its German manufacturing plant during the quarter, for example. But generally, higher interest rates have dampened consumer demand. Charging stations and the time it takes to charge up remains an issue, as does cost. In fact, General Motors, Ford and Toyota have upped their focus on hybrid vehicles at the expense of EVs. It just demonstrates no matter how much goodwill is out there, cost and convenience matter. And the slowdown in the EV tide, that's not quite the right word, the EV charge, that's better. The slowdown in the EV charge is quite remarkable, and we saw that this week from those numbers. Adam.
Both remarkable. I'm going to disappoint someone, obviously.
Well, firstly, you're either going to disappoint me or you're going to disappoint David's children. Think of it that way.
David's children, prepare to rejoice.
Woohoo!
Michael wins on remarkable story of the week this
Right
week.
now, somewhere in Australia, a car is going off. They're honking the horn. They're doing the windscreen wipers. They're spraying water all over the place.
So...
And they're saying, can we change it on to Troll 3? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, no, after it's done.
So the reason is, Sean, those stats on electric vehicles are remarkable. I wonder if it's more temporary than a theme. And with gold price, I'm still astounded at just how much it continues to go up. And I don't know that it's going to slow down. Now, I know obviously it's at the very top end. But it's incredible that this benchmark of value around the world continues to go up. And that's been a long-term theme. So, Michael, you just get it on Remarkable Story of the Week for me.
Thanks, Adam. That's 1-1. I feel like I've been too verbose. I'm going to keep this brief. Let's take a quick break and we'll come straight back with the sleeper story of the week. All right, so we are looking for a sleeper story of the week. Now, Sean, you have given me a heads up of what you're going to do for this one. So, considering the nature of the topic, I think we'll exclude this one from the competition because it is a very serious story, yours.
Yeah, it sure is. It's what's happening in the Middle East. Now, it's funny to fit this into this sleeper category, given there is so much news about it. But we had a dreadful week this week with news that Australian aid worker Zomi Frankham was killed by an Israeli Defence Force airstrike while delivering meals to impoverished Palestinians. She was one of 7 aid workers to die. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was correct when he said it was simply unacceptable. It was simply unacceptable. Mr. Albanese spoke to his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, who apologised. We've heard plenty about that tragic story. If there is any good to come out of it, and it's hard to see that at times, it's the way the world, and particularly US President Joe Biden, has responded. And I suppose this is why I've put this in the sleeper category. The US is Israel's greatest ally. And while most countries have called for an immediate ceasefire and peace negotiations, the US has been much more circumspect. But in the last 48 hours, Joe Biden has warned Benjamin Netanyahu that US support for his war in Gaza depends on new steps to protect civilians like Zomi Frankham. He called the aid worker deaths unacceptable. It is a change in position for the US president, a harder line. The sleeper part is that this harder line from the US will force Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government to think about changing direction. In fact, they'll have to change direction somewhat. Without US support, Israel becomes an international pariah. I say this with fingers crossed and perhaps not a lot of confidence, but this could be a very significant point in the conflict. Now, tens of thousands of people have now died. It, of course, started when Hamas invaded Israel on October 7, killing 1,200 people. We don't have a stance here in terms of either side. It's just the intolerable deaths of 7 aid workers. Hopefully there's a long-term positive in this, in that it actually shifts the balance of what's happening, not in terms of who's winning and losing, just in terms of the peace process.
Yeah, it is such a serious story, a tragic one, an important one to highlight. So I'll just mention a quick sleeper story, and one that's we actually talked a little bit about this, Sean, during the week, and it's one that's closer to home. It's just a bit bizarre.
I know where you're going now, yes.
And it comes from federal politics.
Yeah.
And we're seeing signs here of a really odd repositioning of the major political parties, where we had this week opposition leader Peter Dutton making a speech where he described the Liberals as the party of the worker. And he also... But then at the same time, he kind of contradicted himself and said that if elected, he'd unpick Labor's industrial relations reforms, which would be something to potentially support the business community. Anyway, Peter Dutton also accused Labor of abandoning small business owners and workers to lock in the interests of, among others, big business and industry super funds. It is a sleeper story because you get the feeling that these lines are just being kind of tested this week for the first time. And if they stick with them, they go, oh yeah, that got a good reaction. What it means then is it'll be a much bigger story further down the track, sometime in the next 12 months. When we have an election, and voters will be asked to decide between the Labor Party, the home of big business, and the Liberals, the champion of the everyday worker.
Wow.
Yeah, it is just extraordinary, isn't it? Because then you just have the Greens kind of declaring themselves as the new home of the coal miners, and the Nationals kind of putting inner city bike paths on the agenda as their key policy. The entire political world as we know it would be upended, and it would be the most fascinating, most extraordinary election campaign in history. It is a bizarre set of circumstances, a little bit of a sleeper story, and just further confirmation, I suspect, that politically, Canberra can be a very, very strange place at times.
I'd like to add Canberra can be non-politically a very, very strange place at times as well.
You know what they've got? They've got great bike paths.
They've got great bike paths, that's true.
Excellent roundabouts.
Questacon.
Oh my God, Questacon! Like what a place that is. I haven't been for years.
Fantastic.
It's awesome.
When I went for my job interview to work at in a radio station at in Canberra, so I was like 20 or so, just having finished uni. I spent half the day doing the job interview, and the other half I spent as a 20-year-old amongst all the kids at Questacon.
Did you hang from that gravity drop thing?
Oh my gosh, that's scary.
That's
cool.
Cool.
I went on the earthquake simulator and everything. That was pretty rad.
You were
anyway.
Rad. Okay, so that's a draw. So it's 1-1 as we come into the final round here.
Yep, let's do this. Favourite story, Sean, you go first.
This story has everything. Rich people, sport, success, 4-day work weeks. Can I say that last part again? 4-day work weeks.
Oh, you actually saw Adam rise out of his seat when he said that. Like, this is
starting to cheer early.
Steve Cohen is a reclusive US billionaire who reckons the 4-day work week is on the way, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. Speaking to CNBC, that in itself is relevant because it's the first time the 67-year-old has really done a TV interview like that. He said the advent of artificial intelligence and hybrid working means people are becoming less productive on Fridays. Eventually, people just won't work on Fridays. I think he used the word inevitable. It's just going to happen. We're going to have a 4-day week. As a result, Mr. Cohen is investing in golf. Yep, golf. He's bought the rights to the New York team in a new primetime high-tech golf league. He's also apparently about to invest in the PGA Tour, which is a leading golf tour in the world. He himself is a mad golfer. He's also a professional investor, a hedge fund manager who owns the New York Mets baseball team. He did concede that when the 4-day work week eventuates, he won't actually be allowing his staff to take Fridays off. They'll have to keep working. But in his words, the vast majority of people will be able to have a 3-game weekend, not a 3-day weekend, a 3-game weekend.
What, on each day, Friday, Saturday and Sunday?
That's what he's saying. So he's investing big. It is fascinating that he just thinks that is the way the world's going. As an aside, Mr. Cohen also owns the New York Mets. I mentioned that. When asked about it, he said, and this is a team which has started the season with an 0-5 win rate, as in 0 wins, 5 losses. In its 63-season history, it's lost way more games than it's won. He called it a civic duty, which I'm not sure that the fans of the New York Mets would agree with. But maybe he can play more games on the Friday because more fans will turn up or something on that 4-day work week. Oh. My favourite story, Michael.
I'm gonna call this out here, Sean. Your attempt to pander to the judge, the esteemed Adam Lang, through his fondness and love of the 4-day work week is sickening.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I ask, is your integrity? Where is your honour?
I think that's a rhetorical question.
You won't find anything like that in my entry. As you both know, I'm a big campaigner for reform. Tax reform, all kinds of reform. Anything that is going to improve efficiency, make business more productive.
You are transparent at least.
More profitable. And if those interests align with anyone else here in this room, then that is purely coincidental and not sickening in the slightest. This week, we saw Australia take a giant step towards embracing a digital future. The federal government is offering Australians a voluntary digital ID that works across the economy. So it's basically like the MyGov ID, but it will work beyond the federal government and government agencies into private sector services. So think banks and think utility companies, that kind of thing. They'll be able to use this digital ID to verify the identity of their customers and not have to collect so much data. It sounds good, right? Well, Adam, just hold on to your pants for a second because this is going to get even better.
To your pants?
Yeah. Adam's like, it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of...
He's got no belt. He's holding them up.
Yeah. He's going to get so excited by this. Those pants are going to fall straight off. Think of these small and medium-sized businesses that this is going to help. They won't need to request and verify and store so much personal information from their customers anymore. And in doing so, will remove a massive cyber risk, making their life, making their business much, much easier. Because you see cyber attacks are getting worse. We heard of a big one this week we were talking about. It was a recent attack in the US where telco AT&T was hit. The details of 7.6 million current account holders and 65.4 million former customers were leaked onto the dark web.
Sorry, they were leaked onto the dark web.
Leaking onto the dark web just sounds a little bit messy, doesn't it?
It does.
But seriously, focusing on the digital ID here, it's all voluntary. But if it's going to make your life easier, not having to submit 1 million pieces of ID, and it'll make life easier for the businesses you're dealing with and not require them to store those 1 million pieces of ID and risk having them stolen and then appearing on the dark web, I'm really not quite sure of the downside here. I think it's a big step forward. So I think we unite behind it right now as Fear and Greed's favourite story of the week.
Sean, do you agree?
Oh, my word. Michael. I do like the story, though. I've got to concede that because, I tried to do a loan application with my bank. So I wanted to increase my credit limit on my credit card this week because of that stupid Australian dollar falling against the US dollar means that my credit card repayments have gone beyond my limit. Anyway, not that I want to talk about that. And so my bank has all my information. I do all my banking with it.
Yeah.
Yet I still have to supply stupid payroll slips.
More stuff.
Adam, do you send us payroll slips at Fear and Greed anymore?
Yeah, it's one of the many emails that you might ignore from me.
Right, maybe. But you've got to, in like home loans, and I'm like, you have all this information. Why are you asking me for it?
You see my bank account all the time.
Anyway, I digress. So the digital ID, I don't think that's got anything to do with that whatsoever because it probably, they do know who I am. So can we just, listener, just to raise the last minute or so of this conversation, irrelevant.
Sean, I love the Steve Cohen story. I also, as you know, I think 4-day working week, and that to me means whatever anyone wants it to be, but it shouldn't all be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and many, many jobs aren't like that. And I think as people's life balance flexes, it's great to have that flexibility in their working arrangements too. I just the whole idea of getting behind golf, I love the idea, but gee, a big punt by Steve Cohen. Good on him. Michael, the question for me is, do you remember the Australia card?
Yes.
So this, to me, the digital ID is perhaps a reflection of an idea that's been around for some time, but whose time has come. And so I really like this digital ID for its efficiencies. And Michael, as you described yourself, you've always loved reform. I'm going to nominate you as the patron saint of reform, Michael.
I think it's the role I was born to be appointed to.
Isn't it funny how even when in your 50s, just occasionally your youth, your childhood comes up?
Yeah.
And so, Adam, you're saying, Michael, you're going to be the patron saint. I don't reckon you've thought about a patron saint for 30 years.
I probably haven't.
So suddenly Michael's a patron saint. I'm like, patron saint, yeah.
It's around about when the Australia card came out 30 years ago.
He started talking about that and I'm like, oh, okay.
It got a massive thumbs down. But the digital ID, I reckon, is getting a massive thumbs up, and that's why it's also my favourite story of the week. Well done, Michael.
Well done. It's voluntary. I'm happy to concede that one. I like that story. In fact, I'm giving up my Steve Cohen story. I'm on board.
Yay!
This, Sean, is where if I was in your shoes, I would now try and claim half a point.
Or do a dummy spit. One of the two.
And now I declare it 1.5. But it is not. It's in fact 2-1. And that is a good and unexpected and unprecedented result. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, X and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great weekend.